everybody. Welcome to the very first episode of Learning Pro Intros. And today I am with the amazing Dr. Robin Sargent. So Robin, would you like to tell everybody a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Hi, Nicole. So thanks for having me. Like you said, my name is Dr. Robin Sargent, and I am the owner and founder of Idle Courses. And Idle Courses is a creative learning design agency. And so we do everything from building corporate training to helping new instructional designers gain new skills or start freelancing.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I've seen you've got some great courses out there for new, aspiring, and even seasoned instructional designers. Is that right?
That's right. So there's the Idle Courses Academy, which is like takes someone who wants to transition into instructional design. Maybe they have heard what instructional design is, but they are not quite sure how to land that first corporate job. They would come into the academy to learn everything about instructional design, course templates, build their portfolio, get feedback, get practice, and do all the job application assets, build those so they can land a corporate instructional design job, or even up-level their current ID job.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I've actually heard some great things from your own students. So I know you're doing awesome work over there. How did you, it's kind of a leap for most people, especially if you're new to the field, to even think like, oh, I could be training folks. But, what's your journey look like? How did you get where you are today? What have you done along the way?
Yeah, so my story is similar to many, where it was an accidental find of instructional design. I was an assistant dean of students at a university, and it was just kind of a thing where you start teaching adjunct faculty members about the learning management system, and then the whole transfer of the on-ground program onto online kind of fell into my lap because a bunch of the faculty members were Luddites, and I was the only one who was interested and willing to use the technology to build it out. And then I just loved it. I mean, building the online courses, transferring them, even like the graphics and the creative aspects that come along with it. I was like, oh, I found it. I found my calling or my passion or whatever. And then I also realized you can double your income from making that small move from higher education to corporate. And so I did everything I could to make that transition. It took me about like 8 months, but I rebranded myself and all those kinds of things and landed my first corporate job, and then moved all the way up to director of learning and development. And then I started my own business. And so then after I started my business and, as a full-time instructional designer and e-learning developer, that's also when I started giving back to our community and helping instructional designers make the transition into corporate. And now that's part of my business, is doing that for people on a regular basis. And that also includes helping people become freelancers with you.
Yes, that's quite a journey. So you're talking about how you really like doing the graphic design and all of that stuff when you first made the transition, and it was still sort of accidental. How did you go about getting those skills? Were those things you already had in your arsenal, or were you going out there and learning new stuff?
Well, I think one of the main characteristics of any kind of good instructional designer, or somebody who will make a good one, is someone who's obsessed with learning. And I've always been obsessed. So I'll get obsessed about different topics. And so for me, that when I found instructional design, I became obsessed, and I always do some kind of strategy where it's it's almost called like a scatter method or something. It's I'll go deep into a thing. So for me to make that transition, I looked at how to brand yourself online. And this was back in 2011, 2012. And so I created a portfolio, which was awful. It was just screenshots of the learning management system. I started a blog that looks like nonsense. If you know my first marriage name, then you can still find it. I'm
not giving that secret up.
I mean, you can find it if you try hard enough. And then, it's just all these steps, just to match my name with instructional designer. And so like I filled out my profiles on all these different websites like Scoopit and SlideShare, and I built out my LinkedIn profile and started my portfolio website and the blog and whatever, and I linked them all together. And I basically just spammed the internet till when you Googled like Robin, like whatever my last name was, instructional designer, like I was the first page Google results. And I did that plus like, the resume and applying, and finally somebody, it was the only person that gave me an interview was the job that I got. So it took me a while just to get somebody to give me an interview. And then of course you have to go through 3 interviews, you have to take a test. And then that was my first corporate job, which was quite a culture shock for me, actually.
Yeah.
Go from higher ed to corporate, where I used to have like my own office, and I'm like, Dean Robin or whatever, and now I'm in a cube and I have a boss that like tracks my every move. But the money made it worth it. And then of course, you're doing what you want to do.
Great. I see that a lot. Yeah. So maybe that's a good place to segue into sort of the last big question I have for you, which is, if you had one piece of advice you could give to folks who are aspiring to get into the industry or maybe new to the industry, what would that be?
I think this advice is probably going to be a theme among everybody that you interview, but since I get to go first, I'll say it first. I 100% want to encourage everyone who wants to get into instructional design, especially in like corporate or nonprofit or government, even instructional systems design, build an online portfolio and make courses if you have to from scratch, and get feedback from those who are at the place that you want to be at on your portfolio items. And do not just take your graduate items and throw it on your portfolio. Those are not the types of assets that corporate hiring managers are looking for. Yes. That's my key piece of advice for anyone who wants to make that transition, is to prove your skills.
Definitely. That's such great advice, Robin. Actually, I'm just going to say that I know that as a hiring manager, I remember doing the interviews and somebody telling me they had a lot of experience writing instructional manuals and stuff. And when they came to present the work, it was like a graduate how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich kind of thing. And while I really appreciated it, and I thought she probably could have done the job with some training, that just definitely wasn't what was going to get that person hired. And so it's great advice that you gave, not just to make the portfolio, but to center it on what they want to be doing and getting feedback from real folks if possible.
Yeah.
So is there anything else you want to say before we wrap things up?
Yeah, I also just want to encourage people. I find a lot of my students, when they come into the academy, or when I have a Facebook group, Become an Idol, when they come into those groups or they come into the academy, they lack self-confidence. They have a lot of self-doubt because of what seems like an overwhelming task to make that transition from, whether they're a teacher or a professor or a bank teller into instructional design. And I just want to encourage you that your confidence will grow as you do the practice of instructional design and start implementing feedback. And that, if that is your purpose, is to become an instructional designer, and you take measured, continuous action, you will succeed and you will be successful. And all you have to do is really believe in yourself and take that action. So I want you to erase your self-doubt and keep moving forward.
Yes. I'm on board. I like that. Well, Robin, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with everybody today and being the first to give your little introduction here on Learning Pro Intros. If you want to know more about Dr. Robin and the wonderful things she's doing, you can see her information down in the description below. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, Bye-bye. Thanks for having me. Bye all.